This week on the show, we are delighted to be joined by Mimi Gray and Sarah Williams, founders of Dark Light. They talk to us about their history as art buyers, producers, working globally for advertising brands. It's a really interesting episode. We touch on mental health, we touch on what art buyers do, and we touch on selling art. This week on the pod, I appear to be joined by Lou Reed. Lou, how are you doing?
I'm all right. Thank you, Greg. How are you?
Oh, wait, no, it's just Tom.
My voice is, it's on another level. So apologies. If you haven't got a speaker that can kind of really put bass out, you may be listening to blank noise currently. It's pretty low, right?
Yeah, and I'm guessing it's not the expensive new mic that you bought yourself.
I mean, it's a great mic, don't get me wrong, but it is a little bit kind of overkill.
What have you done? What have you done?
Well,
what are you like? Is it the 40 Benson and Hedges you smoke a day?
It's 45, and that's got nothing to do with it. No, do you know what? So you might have seen on the internet, there is a thing called Clubhouse going around. And I got an
going
invite.
around. What is it?
Going around. It's the new social media hit of the boring 20s. And it turns out I thought it was a bit of a gimmick, so I ignored it at first, and then I joined it. Mr. Oldham sent me an invite, and so I joined it, and actually turns out I quite love it. It's kind of like all the good bits of social media that I never thought would occur, but in a chat. So I'm chatting to people from all over the world, and we're just sharing stories, sharing advice, and it's great.
Kind of like the internet has done a full circle, and we've come back to AOL days, actual literal chat rooms.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's for the people who've joined it. I'm sure you're enjoying it, but the people who haven't joined it, try and get yourself an invite, because I love it. You can tell I love it because. Because I've managed to absolutely wreck my voice. I have now been talking on it almost 12 hours a day for 3 days. and then now I sound like this.
So to improve things, we've decided that probably what you need is to talk even longer on it. So we're thinking of, we're not thinking, we are starting an exposed negative Clubhouse at some point in the near future.
Very exciting.
And yeah, very, very exciting. And we what we're going to do is we're actually going to try and use it to help you guys, the listeners, you guys and girls, to engage and ask questions that you want to ask and actually talk to our guests. So we are planning to start have a room that we host 2 days after our podcast goes live. Our podcasts go live on Tuesdays, and we will be hosting the room on Thursday evenings.
This isn't every week. This is bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly. So 2 days after the podcast goes live. So our podcast goes out, fortnightly, bi-weekly, whatever you want to call it. 2 weekly. And we will host a room on the Thursday evening. And you guys can basically chip in and abuse us online. No, please don't do that.
I think that's against the terms and conditions of the podcast.
Tom might eject you from the room.
We will be the all-powerful moderators. But honestly, it would be great to chat to some of you guys. Not some of you guys. It'd be great to chat to all of you guys. But come join us. This actually seems like the best platform to be able to do it. We can have, the podcast, we hope, has been a very open and refreshing new take on it. We'll keep going with that on the Clubhouse and try and be as open, honest, and if you've got questions for the guests after listening to the podcast, it seems like a great way to follow up with an informed question.
Yeah, so and it'll informed question, but in an informal setting, Tom.
Well, that's it, quite.
Because we encourage you to bring a beverage of choice.
Stills, sparkling, alcoholic, non-alcoholic, you name it. Although it's in the evenings, so avoid having coffee.
Unless, they might be tuning in from a different time zone.
Still, coffee, man.
It's not going to be the evening in Okinawa.
Very true. Very true. It will, however, be 5 a.m.
To our 6 listeners in Okinawa.
Yeah. Hi guys, konnichiwa. Now listen. It is a great thing, but don't, public service announcement, don't do what I've done. Dip in and out of it. Don't get completely hooked and be like, oh my God, I've actually never really spoken to many people from Kansas, for example, and don't do what I did. So I follow NFL. I don't know if any of you guys follow the NFL. Not really a big fan of Tom Brady. No one is. No one likes the Pats, for example. But obviously, when he came to the Bucks, anyway, very, very long story. But don't, however, go into a room full of American photographers and be like, "Hey guys, I'm from London. How are you all?" They go, "Oh my God, someone here from London. Great, yeah. How's it going?" I'm like, "Yeah, cool. Are you guys all impressed by Tom Brady's 7th Super Bowl win?" And they all went, "Yeah, we're all from Kansas." And then as they said that, they had just been thumped by the Buccaneers. Everyone left the room, and I was like, "Oh, right, guys. Anyone? No, just me."
It's one thing that when, in real life, I hate that term, but IRL, when IRL, when you walk into a room and everyone leaves. But it's another thing when you do that virtually.
I find it less offensive virtually.
Is that because there's a leave quietly button?
Yes, the leave quietly is a very polite way of putting it.
Whenever I press that, I imagine kind of sliding backwards out of the room, meekly.
I used to do that at all the awards dues. I'd turn up and people would be like, "Hey, how you doing?" And you
moonwalk out the room.
You always get stuck talking to the guy you don't want to talk to, right? And I've always been very polite, so I've always been like, "Hey, how's it going? Tell me what you've been up to." "Oh, right, you're photographing floor tiles. Oh, interesting. Let's get into it." And then I'm kind of like, "Ooh," slowly backing away.
Like Homer Simpson into a hedge.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's one time at a wedding, and by the way, this is a genuine story. If you think I'm making this up, Greg will tell you I've got my serious storytelling face on. We were at a friend's wedding, and we didn't really know very many people.
Is this the guy who worked in rubbish?
It is the guy. Have I told this story already?
Yes.
Oh,
I think it was on episode 2.
Right. Go back and listen to episode 2. It's a great story. And if I'm right, was episode 2 Chris Floyd?
Yes, that was Chris Floyd, I believe.
A great episode. Go back and listen to Chris Floyd and my rubbish story.
What else have you been up to?
Mainly reminiscing about episode 2.
I mean, obviously, the pandemic's not taken too much of an effect. You're not missing people to the point where you're spending 12 hours a day talking to strangers on the internet.
No, God, no. If I'm honest, the reason I've been able to do that is because you can kind of listen to it like a radio station.
Yeah, it is a good.
So I've been doing what I've been doing, retouching. It's been great.
I joined a room the other day. Shout out to James Hull. He was on there, and I think he was fitting a kitchen whilst listening to it. He's dealing with the plumbing.
Yeah, he's converting a place in Brighton, I think.
So yeah, it's a nice way to do it. I mean, it's difficult if you just join and you're not in a position to really talk, but you're interested in listening. Then someone shouts at you, invites you up to the platform, and you're a bit like, "Oh God, I've got to say something now." So I think when we do our room, the way we're going to do it is, when the listeners come in, we haven't figured this out yet properly, but we're probably going to get people to kind of raise a hand and have a question, and then bring them up for their point, so that we can kind of try and keep some kind of running order, so that it's not order. Tom's going to have his gavel, his virtual gavel.
I'll have to break it out. But do you know what though, Greg?
Judge Barnes.
Judge Barnes. We're going to have to start talking about niches. So, for those who don't understand what a niche is, in the UK, we would probably know it as a niche. But there are lots of Americans. Clubhouse is very American heavy. And actually, I love it for that reason, because you can dive in. It's fascinating to hear how some of those guys work, but they don't say niche how we're used to it. So if you're wondering what a niche is,
it's not an itch in your nether regions.
No, it's not something you have to go to the doctors for. It's a niche. But I would genuinely recommend it, and we're really looking forward to kind of chatting to you guys, and hopefully you guys would be looking forward to it too. Please.
Yeah.
Go on.
And
Please look forward to it.
fingers crossed, we will have this week's guests joining us. So,
Who are this week's guests?
Well, we don't want to do the double introduction, so I'll just let that happen as it plays. So we're going to... Trying to trap me there, Tom. You're trying to trap me.
Now, today's guests, we have the wonderful Mimi Gray and the delightful Sarah Williams. Now, I first met them when they were both art buyers at M&C Saatchi. I think the first time we met, I had bought them ice cream and I was stood on the steps. And because I couldn't go into the building with ice cream, and I couldn't also answer my phone because I had my hands full of ice creams and I couldn't ring them to say I was outside. They were trying to ring me, but I couldn't pick up. And so I was shouting at the receptionist, trying to get them to, and the receptionist didn't quite understand. They just thought there was this mad bloke who was delivering ice creams. So they ignored me. So then by the time Mimi and Sarah had gone, this guy's not showing up, let's go. And they walked out of the front door thinking I'd left. I was there with 3 ice creams completely covered in ice cream. But these guys are wonderfully talented. They have like a myriad of skills, previous roles, jobs, and now they're the founders of Darklight, which is an amazing art service. So, without further ado, hi guys, how are you?
Hi. I completely forgot that ice cream story. You were so sweet and drippy. I remember it vividly.
That's on his bio. Sweet and drippy.
Business cards. That's now Tom Barnes. Sweet and drippy. Great.
Done.
Lovely.
No, I remember it really well. It was a very funny sight. Yeah.
One.
And I felt really sad because it was a really hot day and I really wanted an ice cream.
And they were really expensive ice creams. I was not mucking about. But then they had to go straight in the bin. So
these were simpler times.
They were. Do you remember when we could actually see each other? Oh, it was lovely. But we've known each other years and years and years. Give each other food, yeah.
We have.
And it's been it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you guys over the past couple of years. Do you, for the people who don't know you guys, thank you. For the guys who don't know you or haven't heard of you, do you guys want to just quickly kind of give us a bit about you and your backgrounds? Who wants to go first?
Go on, Sarah.
Sure, I'll go first. Gosh, where did I start? I started as an art buyer, actually, a very long time ago, at a very small ad agency. And then basically I started as an admin assistant for like 6 months. And I saw this role of an art buyer. I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know what it was. But I saw this girl like just looking at portfolios all day and meeting photographers and going on photo shoots and having all these cool creative connections. I was like, I want that job. That's like the dream, just to look at like creative work all day. Yes, please. So when she left, I just said to my boss, can I step in there? Can I do that? And he was like, yeah, of course. So that's how I started. And then I went on to be a producer. I moved to Australia. I lived in Australia for a little bit, where I met Ben Nash, who I know a lot of you know, and was an agent producer over there for a while. Then came back and then pretty much straight away joined M&C Saatchi as their head of art buying, where I met Miss Mimi Gray.
Good times again. So art buying for me as well was kind of pretty much my first job. Like I worked for a year before in Paris, basically doing The Devil Wears Prada at a fashion PR agency, which was fucking horrible. And then finished studying, and I also kind of landed at M&C Saatchi, where I met Sarah. And I just thought, like, wow, I can't believe this is a real job. Like compared to what I'd been doing before, it was just the dream. And now I look back on it fondly as kind of like professional mood board maker, but it was really like an amazing opportunity. And where we worked at M&C, it was kind of a niche position really, because we were doing commissioning and anything visual and Instagram and exhibitions and none of the production really. So it was kind of purely creative and working with creative people. And I think because Sarah and I have always been pretty art obsessed, we tried as hard as we possibly could to make our jobs there all about fine art. So we were like okay, there's this big wall here that's covered in stamps and crappy bits of paper, and we tore everything down, and we were like, this is going to be our exhibition space. Over here is going to be our art library, because there was like the most amazing collection of photography books. And we kind of just did what we wanted, really.
Yeah, we were very lucky. We had an amazing boss, Grant Parker, who kind of just gave us free reign. He was like, look, I trust you guys. I think, you're here for a reason. Just go and do it. And we were like, do you think we need to tell anyone we're going to rip down all their work for that pitch? He was like, no, just do it. Okay, this is going to be our art wall. And yeah, we really did just do kind of what we wanted, and had like creative freedom to turn that like role and department into what we wanted to, which was incredible. And we loved it. And now we miss it. Complained at the time, but now we miss it.
I think he gave us the best piece of advice that I've ever received in my career, which was, it's easier to ask for, what was it? It's
easier to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission.
Forgiveness.
That's it. That's the one.
Yep. I live my life that way.
Yeah. It's so true.
It is.
So for our listeners, can you maybe explain kind of what the day-to-day role of an art buyer in a kind of agency is? I mean, I know you've touched on it, but some people listening may never have kind of come across art buyers before, or know exactly what it is that they do.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I think it's a bit of a dying trade. But I will always fiercely argue that it's needed, and a very valuable role within an ad agency. It's basically the person who commissions all artists and photographers for any of the ad campaigns. So your role is really to know who's out there, who's shooting what, who's creating what, whether it's illustration, whether it's photography, to know kind of what their price point is. When you get a creative team, they come up with an idea and they put it on a scamp and they're like, we want this to be an illustration. We want this to be like this style of photography. Who do you know? And you're really meant to go, I saw this work the other day by this guy. It was amazing. It'd be perfect for this, and
quote there. Everyone comes to you and is like, just off the top of your head, do you know a tattoo artist based in New York who does mainly old sort of American sailor tattoos? And you're like, yep.
Yeah, that's basically the skill of an art buyer is to know who everyone is and know their style, and also I think to get to know as many photographers personally as possible, because you want to know what they're like on set. You've got some clients who are super laid back and you pair them with a particular style of photographer, but other clients are really tricky and you need someone who's really fast and really on the ball and just gets everything done. So you kind of need to know a bit about what the photographer's like, and then you do all the negotiating and, we've got 50p. Oh, well, you need more than that if you're going to get this guy, etc. And you kind of balance out, because art buyers are big advocates of the photographers. So they kind of sit in between and they're on both sides. Like, you've got to do the best for the agency and get the right person at the right budget. But at the same time, you want to make sure that the creative's protected, and you want to make sure that, you're paying as a fairer rate as possible to the photographer, really. So it's about understanding the financial sort of side of it as well.
The other thing about it that it's such a shame what Sarah was saying about art buyers kind of becoming a bit of a thing of the past is that you're there as the person to make sure that an agency is not just repeat commissioning the same person over and over, and you're there to kind of fly the diversity flag and to think like, who actually has the authority to speak on this topic? Where do the values align in what their life experience is, the work that they're creating, the kind of things that they're talking about? Yeah, that kind of stuff is so important. And it was such a weird feeling, actually, because I think when I left M&C, I was 27. And to feel like you're already obsolete at 27 is a really weird feeling.
Mm.
So why is it that the industry's kind of leaving art buyers behind? Is it because they're kind of, people feel like, oh, I know artist because I'm on Instagram and I'm following so and so, or the roles shrinking because the agencies are shrinking, or what are the reasons?
It's a combination of things. I think a lot of it's down to budget, and I know agencies have to be more and more careful of how they're spending their money, and I think in a lot of people's eyes, this is something that a creative team could do. The creatives can know all the photographers. The creatives can find the right people. From speaking to creatives in agencies, and I know that the art buying department was a department they really valued, because they were the ones who were like, I know one or two people, but I don't know everybody. So, I think it is actually extremely useful. But yeah, I think for in a lot of people's eyes, if you put down on paper what an art buyer did, and a finance department were looking through where they needed to make cuts in the agency, they're like, they find photographers. Someone else can do that.
It's a luxury item.
Yeah, and I do think actually, Instagram has a lot to answer for as well. In that sense, that it's a lot easier for people to find new talent now, I suppose. But if you're looking for someone on Instagram, you're only going to be seeing what they're like visually. You don't necessarily know how much what their day rate is. You don't know what they're like. You don't know, you're purely basing it off the shots that they create, which is really only kind of not even half of the job. So I think it's just making cuts is probably my thing.
I guess with that, obviously, there's a huge amount of experience that is required, especially when you're dealing with like difficult clients and stuff. And if you kind of find a guy on Instagram and he goes, oh, look at the work's great, he's just very good at retouching, and then all the other side of things are completely gone, you could really kind of be opening yourself up to a whole world of pain.
Totally. And that happens
the flip
a lot,
side of that. There is a flip side to that, though, as you said, Mimi, about kind of access. I mean, there's probably lots of people who wouldn't have ever even have approached an agency or an art buyer because it just wasn't in their world. And maybe like younger photographers or photographers from different backgrounds who aren't necessarily going to feel like they've got the same opportunities. So in some ways, Instagram as a platform potentially democratizes who can be seen, which is a positive. But as you said, there's always the aspect of actually how experienced is this person. And I guess that's even harder at the moment because people aren't having face-to-face portfolio meetings. I mean, traditionally, if not more than half of a portfolio meeting is actually just getting to meet the person and see what they're like, right?
Yeah, totally, 100%.
And so in terms of, there's roles like art buyers which maybe are disappearing slightly. Are there other roles that have emerged in the last 5 years that weren't there before? Are there kind of titles that are suddenly popping up where people are saying, I'm a so-and-so, so-and-so, and you're like, oh, what do you do at the agency?
That's a good question.
Is it changing?
I
think it's more than
go on.
The purse strings have tightened. Agencies are getting smaller. They're more freelance based. Ad agencies can't afford the kind of huge office, massive overheads, full staff to do anything that might be required for any job. It just doesn't really work like that anymore. So whilst I don't know, because I'm not currently working in an agency, I would imagine not.
I agree. I don't know of any new roles that have popped up. I think, if anything, more roles are being merged together, where you used to have art buyers and producers, you now have art producers.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there's... I had a point and it's totally gone. I was going to say that where do you see it going? Because obviously agencies are shrinking a little bit at the moment, perhaps, and this pandemic is certainly not going to have helped. But there will be a bounce back. And there are more channels than ever that people need to be advertising on. Like back in the day when it was like, right, you had your billboard and then you had your kind of your Super Bowl commercial or whatever. Like you had quite prescribed, you had a bus, A6 bus sheet or whatever it was. You've got those kind of things. They're quite simple. Whereas now you've got like, oh, actually, we want to run it as an Insta story, and we also want to put it on TikTok, and we need to have a banner ad for this website, and we need to have this. There's so many assets now that surely there's even more things to be worrying about and thinking about, but yet the teams have got smaller
Yeah.
because the budgets have got smaller. So basically, are people having to wear a lot more hats?
Yeah, I would say so. Definitely.
And the clients are doing a lot more in-house.
Okay, right. Interesting. And why
Yeah.
do you think that is? Do you think it's because they've looked at it and gone, you know what, we can do this, or because they're trying to cut costs, or because they want more control?
A bit of both.
I think it's both. I think clients have become a lot more educated, and a lot of stuff that only ad agencies and, you know, the professionals in agencies knew how to do. Now, marketing departments in big companies know a lot of that stuff themselves, so they can do it. And they're like, well, why are we paying a 7-story building in Soho and, you know, all these hundreds of people that go with it to fundamentally do an Instagram campaign when we can just call the photographer direct? So I do think that there's a lot more that is sitting with clients these days than they're ever used to. So ad agencies, I think, are probably losing out on some of that.
I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I know that it's like change is scary, and this has been sort of unraveling for a few years now. Like, we know the general direction it's headed, but I think as much as we can, we should try and be excited by it and keep up with the way things are changing. And, you know, maybe as a photographer, if your old contact was an art buyer at an ad agency, it's not anymore. So just, you know, you have to find out who those new contacts are, and it's just a different way, a different time.
I do a lot of work with clients directly now. And actually, in a way, I love working with agencies, but also I love working with the clients direct. With the client direct, when they pick up the phone to you, you can get issues ironed out in minutes, whereas it could take hours because you're going via someone and
Round houses.
and a little bit of Chinese whispers as well, because there's always going to be someone who doesn't want to upset someone or, you know, something, so they soften it slightly or change it in a way. And actually what really needs to be had is a 5-minute conversation where you can have it all out and then just move forward, rather
Totally agree.
become a big blown out thing that gets changed by various people who are desperately trying to keep the peace in the middle. You know, sometimes those conversations have got to be had.
Totally. And I think the future is that it's either going to be direct, or agencies are going to become a lot more modular, and they're going to have, you know, 90% freelance staff.
Yeah, I think that's likely to happen. It's already happening. And yeah, I think people need to roll with the punches a little bit. It's like Mimi said, it's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think, you know, working direct with a client can be really exciting, can be really interesting. Like you say, you cut out a lot of the middleman and a lot of the chit chat that goes on that actually can just waste a lot of time. So it's the lack of art buyers is sad, but I think there are benefits that are coming with some of the changes.
Interesting.
Do you know what? It's such a funny one. We've never had 4 people doing a podcast before. This is our first time of actually doing more than 3. So, yeah, apologies.
Look at us all being awkward turtles trying to speak.
So obviously part of your role at MNC was putting on events, and we, you know, also you've started something with another lady called The Visual Diet. Now, myself and my wife were at the launch.
The lady's called The Visual Diet?
No, the lady's not called The Visual Diet.
Marine. I mean, her name is Marine.
That was it, Marine, right? So what do you call the Visual Diet though? Is it a movement? Is it a company? Is it what do you want to just give us a bit of background about it?
Let's go with movement. Yeah. So when I was at MNC Saatchi in the last sort of 3 years, or I don't know, longer, I became really interested in the link between imagery and mental health. And that was obviously always top of mind working at an ad agency, because I think advertising is responsible for a lot of the kind of visual landscape, mainly the bad parts. And so I was thinking a lot about this. Everyone's at this point obviously completely obsessed with Instagram, and I'm watching a lot of my friends, and probably myself included, just kind of become quite depressed and overwhelmed with just the full-on amount of imagery that is like hurtling towards you all the time, and most of it being like celebs and beaches and stuff that feels so far away from your reality when you're living in Peckham and taking the number 12 bus for 2 hours a day and like, you know, walking in like chicken bones down the street. You know, it just is like, if all you're seeing is luxury beach holidays on Instagram, then you're like, what am I doing wrong in life? Like there's something very strange going on. So I met with a woman called Maureen Tongi, who owns MTR Agency. And we started speaking on this topic of mental health and imagery. And we both kind of agreed on the fact that for us, art was the antidote to a bad visual diet. And that was like a phrase that we kind of coined that came out of these discussions. And so when I say that, I mean, your visual diet is made up of all the things that you see over the course of your days, weeks, lifetimes. So good and bad, like stuff that you see on Instagram, good stuff that you see, art in galleries, exhibitions, advertising, outdoors, like everything, images on the news. And so we thought, how can we sort of talk about this and harness the power of art as a positive force for mental health, to combat all the bad stuff. So we launched with a big exhibition and collaborated with Rankin, which was really cool. And then a bunch of other artists from MTR, including Adelaide Damoa and Clémence Vazard. And we made a bit of noise, actually. We got some good press. We ended up speaking on the main stage at Cannes Lions and writing articles. And it was really exciting. I was just having a look at an article that I wrote recently, because Sarah and I are sort of writing a piece on art and mental health for Darklight now. And I was reviewing some of the old stuff I wrote, and I wrote a piece for Creative Review on this topic. And I tagged, because I mentioned as part of the article, I tagged Cindy Sherman because she had been posting some selfies, and I was like, well, is this art or is it a selfie? Does it matter? I tagged her on Instagram and she DM'd me. So cool. Like, I really remember, like, I was on a bus and Cindy Sherman slid into my DMs.
I did not know this. You never told me that.
Well, I'm a very personal person.
Not when it comes to news like that.
I know. It was like probably the coolest thing that's ever happened. She just sent a little emoji and was like, this is very interesting. And I was like,
wow,
I love you. Fangirl. I've gone a little bit off topic here, but broadly, that's kind of like what started our interest, and like, I guess ultimately what was the beginning of Darklight, or the thoughts behind Darklight art.
Before we get on to Darklight, I'd love to quickly just talk about the shots you did with Rankin. Obviously, this being a photography podcast. Now, if I'm right, you teamed up with Rankin and presented a load of models and he photographed them, and then he asked the models how they would want to look in the retouch. Is that right? And then he kind of retouched excessively how they requested, and then showed the before and after. Is this?
Yeah, almost. So
that's how I remember it.
He shot about 12, slightly wrong, 12 young people, kids, between age 8 and 18. And the thing that he was really into at the time when I went to go and speak to him at Hunger was he was like obsessed with the idea of how terrifying it was that these apps like Facetune were being used by young kids. It basically made like quite sophisticated Photoshop technology accessible to kids on smartphones. And they were playing with the way that they looked. And this was then having like a huge impact on their mental health and their sort of like how they were seeing each other, body dysmorphia. So we did some like quite plain headshots of the young kids, girls and boys, and then gave them their headshot on a phone with Facetune. And basically the brief was, make this social media ready. Like, what would you do if you were going to post this selfie on Instagram? Right. And so they did that all themselves, and then we just mimicked it with Photoshop.
Right.
And it was pretty scary.
Pretty powerful idea, though. I like that. I think that's a really interesting statement to make.
It was a great idea.
And it really did make the whole project made quite a big impact. And I mean, those shots were everywhere. I mean, weren't you even on BBC News or Sky News or something?
Yeah, went on Sky News with like a really terrifying interviewer who's like a political broadcaster. I hate like public speaking. I don't know if it's coming across now, but Sarah's very good at this. Sarah's like the yang to my yin, like, you know, we're so opposite, and I'm just very much comfortable backstage painting the scenery, don't have any interest in being on camera. And we kind of got thrown all these opportunities that you really can't say no to.
Wow.
It's like, it's for the greater good.
The greater good.
So
The greater good.
Let's bring it back to, rather than visual diet, let's bring it back to mental health in general. Now, obviously, photographers, we're terrible at sitting on Instagram. Actually, not just photographers. I think we all are. There's something about human nature that wants us to just keep constantly flicking, constantly consume. And then with complete disregard to our mental health, and we'll just keep flicking through and be like, oh, that's a cool shot of a beach in Barbados, and boom, oh, that guy shot that campaign, you know. And I think we ever really take a break from it. So I've started deleting. I was on Clubhouse and we were chatting about this, and I delete the app at the weekend.
Well done.
It's great. It feels honestly absolutely fantastic.
Bravo.
Sorry, Sarah, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say it's not human nature, it's Apple.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Facebook.
Yeah.
it's designed to kind of appeal to that addictive endorphin rush, though, isn't it? Even the way that the constant scrolling is based off gambling machines. It's the same with Twitter. When they came up with the infinite scroll, they were like, this is genius. What
I would say, though, is it's kind of, you know, you say it's Apple, but I actually think that it is human nature enabled by Apple, because I think there's something incredibly voyeuristic about human nature. There's a curiosity about what other people are doing that I feel that there's just kind of like, it was going to happen one way or the other with the kind of the advent of the internet. First, it was forums, and then it was blogs, and then it was social media, then Mumsnet. Probably Mumsnet before social media.
Mumsnet is the real problem here. Take them down.
Right. No, Mumsnet, we love you. You're great.
You don't want to take on Mumsnet.
I was going to say, we know how powerful you are. Mumsnet, you're fantastic.
I'm on a version of Mumsnet that's for people who own Sphinx cats.
Sphinxnet.
It's like Sphinx parents. I can't remember what it's called, but it's my source of unlimited knowledge.
Wow.
I love that.
Yeah, sub-forums, that is. It's a whole other realm.
Felinefellows.com.
But I feel like it's human nature that's just being exploited on a huge, enormous scale. You're right. The apps are designed by the same people who design gambling apps. It's the endless scroll. It's the half-second beat when you open your phone and you wait for the number of notifications. That's like your kind of what do you call it? What's that dopamine one with the cherries? Yeah, it's a dopamine hit. You know
the one-arm bandit.
Yeah. I'm glad that none of us are into gambling, clearly, because we don't even know what that machine is called. It's like also when people are typing and it tells you that they're typing, so you wait. It's like every single tiny aspect is designed to keep you on there.
Nightmare.
Yeah. And so, and it's interesting though for photographers, because obviously they are the majority of our audience, I guess. It's a tricky one because Instagram is this kind of, it's a love-hate thing. It's a real Marmite kind of app for me, because I am well aware of how much more time I've spent not actually engaging with it in any sense, just looking through it in the last year than I did in previous years. And that's because I've had more time on my hands and it's become more of a habit. But I've also kind of stopped posting and started self-censoring myself on there because of almost kind of feeling like I need to curate my feed. And that isn't why I signed up to it at all. Like when I used to keep a blog, I used to love it because it was kind of just a place to put stuff that I was trying and ideas that I had. And it's almost like a scrapbook. I mean, I keep scrapbooks anyway, like physical scrapbooks. And I love doing them because they're not for anyone. They're just for me. and I can afford then to be totally free with the way I put work together and play around and experiment without any kind of fear of being judged or someone saying, well, actually, we were going to give him that job, but now have you seen that post? It looked a bit crap. So actually, that's made me reassess my opinion on that person's portfolio. So for photographers, it's a very different beast, I think, because it becomes something that you almost feel like is really, you really have to worry about. You get certain anxiety about the way that your feed looks, but also the way that you have to engage with it. And I kind of resent that because I don't want to have to engage with it. I don't want to have to kind of be involved in it just to be getting work.
The other thing with it is I feel like actually with a lot of social media that it's almost like we're all playing a game, but they're not telling us what the rules are. Like they change things all the time, but we don't know. You don't get an update from Instagram saying, by the way, the algorithm has now changed and this is what's happening. We're all kind of guessing or, read it or hear about it or whatever, but you don't get that information from them. So they make it very, very difficult. And they've also made it so we're so reliant on it. And you're right, like it's a total love-hate thing. And it's a wonderful thing and it's an awful thing, It's a great way for art buyers to find new talent. I mean, Mimi and I used to use it all the time to find new artists and new talent. And, we literally used to go home in the evenings. And if we had a job that we were really excited about, we'd just go down a bit of a rabbit hole and you could find some amazing people. So that's wonderful. But then, the downside is, you also could use it as a way of finding photographers and judge photographers purely on their page. And I admit I still do that. Like I will look at someone's page and I'll scroll through and I'll be like, no, I'm not really sure I like that. It's not really what I'm looking for. But I do force myself now to look at websites as well and make sure I really do my research if I'm looking for someone specific. But it's a great thing and a terrible thing in equal measure.
I'm interested, Sarah, to pick up on one of those points. How, when you say you kind of look through and you've kind of judged people's work on it, on Instagram, do you enjoy seeing stuff that is more, what kind of stuff do you look for when you are looking at work on Instagram? Because some people have very curated feeds, some people will do those big kind of multi-image things that then go out of whack if you put one image wrong on your feed. Some people do personal posts that might just be shot on their phone. I mean, I know some amazing photographers that don't put anything professional up. They all are still posting with just snaps that they take on their phone. I mean, I know it's going to be different for every person, but it's interesting, I guess, for some of our listeners to kind of get a gauge of what are turn-offs and what are turn-ons. For me,
if you are trying to sell your work and what you do through Instagram, for me, seeing pictures of your food, your holidays, and your children is not going to make me love it. Unless it's shot in your style, then totally fine. I do prefer it when I see photographers' work on their website that is their work rather than personal. And I much, and I know Mimi will agree with this, prefer it when it's personal work rather than commissioned work. Because for me, personal work shows you so much more about a photographer, like 1,000,000 times more than if you put up shots that were shot for somebody else, which had the input of a creative director. It had the input of the client. It's had, retouches all over it. When you see that stuff, it's quite difficult actually to see what the photographer's original thoughts were and how much input they had into it. It's always really important to be able to see that they've done that work and that they can handle big clients and they can shoot certain things. But for me, the most important thing when looking for a photographer is to see their personal work and personal projects that they've shot, because it's like 100% them and their stamp on it. So that's what I like to see when I'm looking through Instagram. But that is, like you say, that's a personal thing. And I'm sure, everyone has different thoughts and opinions on what they would like, but that's just what I like.
Out of curiosity, how much does like when you go on someone's feed, does it really matter how they have it laid out? If you curate it to the point where it's beautifully toned and stuff like this, does that really bother you, or is it kind of? Because I put up
it doesn't bother me.
No,
it doesn't bother me, but it's more eye-catching. if it's been beautifully curated,
Sure.
it will draw me in quicker. I'll be like, ooh, that's interesting. And I'm probably more likely to send it to Mimi and be like, look at this. This looks awesome. You know, if it's not beautifully curated, it doesn't mean I don't like it at all. I'd be like, oh, you know, because Mimi and I were actually looking through a load of photographers yesterday, and we were looking at, there was a real mixture of people in there actually. And some of them had really curated feeds, and some of them had real, like, they're a bit all over the place. They had a bit of editorial work. They had some commissions, some personal stuff. But I think the main thing is that there's a thread that runs all the way through, whether it's your website or your Instagram or your portfolio, actually. And that thread is 100% you, whatever your style is. It's just got to have your stamp on it.
I totally agree. I don't need for a photographer to be a curator, because again, it's a different skill set, different job. But if someone has a unique take on the world, and I'm going to quote one of my faves here because I can't not, but Jack Davison, he shoots some personal stuff. Like, he'll put a picture of his dog up, but it's so beautifully shot and it's completely in his style. And it's the way the light hits it. It's like contrast, like, I want to live in his world. And so if I see an Instagram account or a website from a photographer and I think, God, I would just love to see through your eyes, and everything on there is that.
Yeah, he's one of those. Really special. He's one of those people who's managed to really kind of keep his own unique way of looking. And I see it being aped all the time now. It's interesting because you can see in his early work, you can see the, the inspiration that he had from kind of people like Soul Lighter and what have you coming through. And then now you can see other people looking at Jack's work and it really inspiring the way that they shoot and the way that he grades and everything.
Yeah.
But I think he's one of those people that if I had to pick somebody in the last 5 to 10 years that has really kind of grown on via Instagram and really kept true to themselves, I think it would be him.
Yeah, 100%.
So moving on then from the kind of the visual diet, that was something that you are still kind of working alongside. If people want to see more and hear more about that, where can they find out more, Mimi?
Yeah, so I guess the best place to probably go is the Instagram, which is visual.diet. I'm sort of not coming away from it now, but shifting focus, so putting all of my energy into dark light.
So Mimi, obviously you were doing the visual diet, but I think if I'm right, you are now obviously kind of taking a bit of a step back on that and focusing properly on Darklight, which is the company you founded with Sarah.
Yeah, that's it. So I think Sarah and I, since M&C days, like, we knew that we always wanted to work together. We work so well together. We're complete, like, polar opposites, but we just have this really good balance. Like, she's obviously like super light and colorful, and she's inspired by all things like bright and like, I don't know, I think her style is amazing. Light and happy. She's like a rainbow, ray of sunshine. And then I'm maybe more similar to you, Tom, where I'm quite inspired by darker themes, and I love horror and black and white. And anyway, so we've sort
all
of
the creepy stuff that makes me cringe.
Monochrome.
Yeah, monochrome. My 8-year-old niece recently told me that my Instagram was really scary and gross.
And that, my friend, is how you know you're doing it right.
Exactly. Anyway, so Sarah and I knew we wanted to work together. Sarah came and visited me in Amsterdam, and we were sat having a beer in a bar somewhere, and we just thought, what can we do? Like, we knew we wanted to stay in photography. We knew we wanted to edge towards fine art. And we thought, there's all these amazing photographers who we would love to work with. And whose work that we would love to own, but we just, they're not selling it for one reason or another. Like, maybe they're focusing on working editorially or commercially, and they are not interested in it, or they don't know how to do it. And like, how can we bring these people together and connect, like, art, people who want to buy art and start collecting with the artists, and how can we tell their stories and support them? So Darklight Art was sort of born as an online platform selling fine art photography and visual art. We're selling small edition prints, and I think I mentioned this before, but we're really keen to never call ourselves a gallery, because we just want it to be completely accessible and different to kind of I don't know, like the art market can be so wanky, and it's like, how do we make this a friendly space and allow more people to enjoy it and be inspired by it? And yeah,
and this isn't just. But this isn't just a knee jerk, is it? This isn't just a knee jerk reaction. Like, there are a lot of photographers who are now setting up print stores and just selling their prints as a bit of a, oh crap, I need to get some money in. Like, this is an amazing platform. Like, if you guys don't know, it's what's the web address? Darklight-art.com.
Darklight-art.com.
That's the one.
Yeah,
I meant hyphen. But the website's beautiful, and the prints you guys do are literally stunning.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, a big part of what the business is about as well is mental health, and we're big advocates of mental health, partly sort of stemmed from Visual Diet to a certain extent, and it's just something that we've both always been really passionate about. And I mean, it just became more and more sort of prevalent this year, obviously, in the past year, and the importance of it. So we decided sort of quite early on, when we decided on the company and what it was going to be, we wanted mental health to be at the forefront of it. So we teamed up with Young Minds. So a percentage of every print we sell goes direct to Young Minds, which is an amazing charity for children and young people. And they specifically focus on the mental health of children and young people. So they're an incredible company, and we really wanted to support them. And also we wanted not just to be like a shop that sells prints, because we know a lot of people are doing that, but the reason we keep calling it a platform is because we also have our editorial section, and we were keen to do that because we wanted to have a voice and to be able to bring other people in, and thoughts and opinions of people in the industry, other artists, other writers, to talk about mental health, to talk about the importance of art and photography. So that's also kind of a big part of what we do.
Amazing.
Yeah, I think like what you said, the art market now is like having to totally spin around, and all the big galleries have gone online, but we're in a good place in that we're really built for this, like this was always our intention. It wasn't just a consequence of coronavirus and global pandemic and scary shit. This is like where we see the future. And we read a really scary figure in the kind of art report in the FT the other day, which was that 8% of galleries made zero revenue in 2020. 8%, which is mega. They made not a single sale. And I think that is most likely due to like obviously like economic crisis, and it's a hard time to sell art, but like the kind of traditional galleries being so hesitant to move online. And I think a lot of them thought, we'll just weather this storm and we'll shut our doors for a few months and then it will be over. And it's not over. And like, this is the way things are now.
Yeah, sure. If you can't open your doors, you can't sell. And if you then don't have an online presence, you will make no money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's bonkers.
Yeah,
God.
It is bonkers. And when everyone's so stuck at home and feeling so uninspired and galleries are closed, like how can you get as much art into people's homes as possible? Like we read a quote really early on when we were working on our site by Twyla Tharp, I think it is, which was art is the only way to run away without leaving home. And we found that so inspiring because that's exactly what it does for us. It's like mental escapism.
Yeah. No, we've been talking a lot about... Go on.
No. I was just going to say, Twyla Tharp does the book, The Creative Habit.
I was wondering what you were looking at.
Yeah, behind me, wonderful bookcase, and I have a lot of random books in there. But yeah, Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit. It's a good one.
Very good.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot this year, in the past year, about the importance of art in your home. And I mean, we've been talking a lot about the art that we have in our houses and what it means to us. And you know, it's crazy that we spend so long in the past year, how much time we've all spent looking at the same four walls. And that quote really couldn't be more apt right now, because you can't go anywhere. trip anywhere outside the M25 seems quite exciting to me right now. And all I'm looking at is the walls of my house, and the images around me are kind of vital for my sanity, quite honestly.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I don't think any of us quite, I'm used to spending a lot of time in the office, but I didn't think I'd ever be confined here. Like, I didn't think I would be literally locked in my house and be like, you're not allowed to leave. I just
Totally.
I never think that was going to be a thing. So I do think there's a lot of people who've actually kind of been spending a lot of time at home and going, right, let's make this a nice, pleasant, enjoyable place to be, rather than somewhere we just purely live.
Totally. I mean, let's repaint the house. Let's buy a cat. Let's, get flowers in and hang out.
Interestingly, I was speaking to an artist last week probably shouldn't mention his name, but he said that this year the last year has been the most profitable ever for him. And he has galleries, but he also sends a lot online. And it's really nice to hear some positive news coming out of this year and people being successful. But it really just goes to show that, the value of, also his work is very positive and very happy and life affirming. So I think that's got a lot to do with it. And it's just really nice that people are thinking like that and trying to fill themselves with love and joy and surround themselves with good things. And that, artists can be making a profit out of it, because photographers and artists need all the help they can get, quite frankly, at the moment.
Yeah, it's funny.
This is like... Oh, sorry, go on.
No, go on.
No, I was just thinking, for us, like, to be able to make a living whilst supporting artists is like the ultimate goal for us. I mean, we did a project a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, with Lights of Soho. We worked on a project called No Artists, No Art, and went around Soho covering up all the amazing art that's in, like, I don't know, Black's Club and Soho House, and the impact that had by doing this like art blackout is suddenly like, okay, yeah, we need artists, don't we? Like, you feel it, don't you? Because they're doing like the most important job. So any way that you can support them, even if it's by buying a 50 quid print, like, that is enabling someone to make amazing work and to carry on their practice and not having to kind of give all that up.
No, absolutely. So if people want to find more out about Darklight, where can they find you guys?
Well, our Instagram is quite a good way just to get a good overview of what we do. Obviously, so our Instagram is darklight__art. And our website is darklight-art.com. So those are the best places. And then you can always get in touch with us. We're both, one of the things that we really wanted to be was very at the forefront of our own business. We wanted to be very, we're two humans, we're Mimi and Sarah, and we're just on the end of the phone or just at the end of the DMs or the email or whatever. We don't want to be like a faceless gallery. We want people to just reach out and have a conversation and have a chat. And God, some of the, our closest artists and photographer friends now are people we just met on Instagram who just DM'd us. So yeah, and I mean, Jesse Draxler, one of our artists that we represent, we've known about him for years. We knew about him at MNC and we just both loved him and followed him on Instagram, and we just DM'd him, and that's how our friendship started with him. So yeah, we're very much encouraging of people just getting in touch and saying, hey, because we like people, we like having conversations, especially with creatives.
And when you say
only with creatives,
only with creatives, no one else.
Not really. I'm just Sarah's the extrovert. The people person.
No, I think it's great. I wish you guys the absolute best of luck with it. Is this now you've mentioned that this is kind of something that you've set up, seeing how things are going in the future. Do you think we're going to have another year where it's pretty tough?
Yeah. We're full into the boring 20s right now, but I do feel very reassured that when this is all over, we are going to have the world's biggest party, and it's going to be awesome.
The boring 20s.
I think so. I do think that I think lots of positives are going to come at the end of this. I think, lockdown number one, we were all thinking that, we'd just click our fingers and it would all go back to normal and everything would be fine very quickly. I think almost a year down the line, we've realized that nothing's going to just click back into place, and the world is going to have really changed a lot in terrible ways and in really good ways. I think we can't underestimate, the value of what we've all learned from the past year. I think it's still going to be a tough year. I think it's still going to be difficult for a lot of people, but I think ultimately, I think we're kind of, in a way, putting down a really good base for rebuilding everything.
Yeah.
So I'm quite optimistic. Although I don't believe that we can just go straight back to how we were, I do think that eventually things are going to be better.
Yeah. Good. No, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Bit of optimism to end on, isn't it, there?
Well, I am the light one.
Yeah, that's it. Mimi, what do you think?
Oh, God. Should have asked her first.
You don't want to know. You do not want to know. I'm not going to answer.
No, fair enough.
Our company name is literally based on that.
It is, yeah.
Light is obviously a nice play on the, it has obvious photographic references, which is part of the reason, but it's also, it's just us.
A little warning, because I was just thinking of what you were saying, like, well, we had to put 2 underscores in our name and, we wanted to get darklightart.com, but don't go to that because it's actually the website for a woman who went missing in like the 80s, which I'm really fascinated with. And now a lot of our passwords are her name.
Why have you told everyone your passwords?
Not important passwords, just like
and what?
And go and look it up and then break into our bank account.
If you can also your mother's maiden name and your date of birth, please, and then we are set up.
Don't worry. I think I've changed them, but
no, I made her change that.
I was so interested by the story of this woman.
It was a very Mimi thing to do. She was like, oh my God, look how cool this is. This is some woman who went missing in the 80s. This is so dark. I love it. All our passwords are going to be her name. I was like, don't you dare. That is disgusting and dark and creepy and I don't like it.
Well.
So you can rest assured I changed all the passwords to something a lot happier.
Can I make you guys feel a little bit better about giving away your passwords on the podcast? If you go to darklightart.com, it no longer exists.
Really? Oh, amazing.
The domain may be for sale.
Okay, guys, I think I need to give Jasper his laptop back.
Sure. But by that website. Yeah.
Okay.
And now nobody knows, because there were a lot of people who went missing in the 80s. So everything was fine.
Tons of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Listen, we'll quickly wrap it up. Obviously, how long do you have? A couple of minutes?
1 sec. Let me just.
Sarah,
let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up, because obviously now we usually have we normally strand our guests on a desert island at the end of the show with a camera and a photo book. Now, I think we might have actually just jumped this on you without preparing you for it. But if you were to have, for example, one book out of your entire collection, what would it be?
Memes, do you have to go? Do you want to go first?
No. Okay, yeah, let's do this. It's actually not a book that I own. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I would pick Diane Arbus, A Box of 10 Photographs. Mm-hmm. Sorry, 1 second. I've just lost you. I'm completely obsessed with her work. I think she's amazing. She was one of the first photographers to be considered an artist and to be for her work to be accepted into like the canon of art. And that work, it was the first photography to ever be in the Venice Biennale in 1972, I think. And I just, with her, you really only need 10 photographs. Like, amazing.
Brilliant. And Sarah?
Camera?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, camera. Yeah. Forgot about that. Whoops.
Camera. I don't really, to be honest, I'm such a shitty photographer. My dad used to have this cool little like point and shoot camera when I was growing up. And I think it was a Yashica. Yes. So I would pick that.
Perfect.
And Sarah, what would your camera and book be then?
So my camera would be an Instax. And there may be some photographers out there shaking their heads going, oh my God, I can't believe she just said that. But I've never been a photographer. There's a reason I'm an art buyer and a curator and not a photographer. But I love Instax because it's so playful and you can actually get away with a lot more. I feel like if someone comes at me with like a professional looking camera, you kind of like, oh, I don't want my photo taken. Or you like stand up straight and do a silly smile or whatever. But in Instax, you can pull it out at a party and you can just get people, they don't take it as seriously and you can get some really natural shots with it. And actually, I know no one else is going to be able to see this, but you guys can see. On my wall, I've got a cork wall. And
look at that.
Those are all my Instax photos that I just pin up on my cork wall. And I just love it. It's just like fun and carefree and, and you can't really take many serious pictures with it, I find myself.
It makes you feel any better. I have 2 of them. And I have the printer because when I occasionally, well, not so much at the moment, but when I used to do NGO work or shoot abroad, some places it was really nice to be able to give people a print there and then. If you're taking their portrait for something that felt a bit formal and you just felt like at the end of it you had nothing to say thank you, and it was really nice to be able to actually give them a print there and then, especially when you're working with children or anything like that.
Lovely.
Some people look at that print and it's probably might be the only physical picture they have of themselves, because so many people nowadays only have pictures of themselves on phones.
Yeah, so true. No, I think that's the other thing. I mean, if we're being practical about this, if I'm on a desert island, I don't want all my pictures to be stuck in my camera. And you're not going to be able to develop any film. This is
there is a lab.
There is a lab. There's a lab. Yeah. We figured that quite early on that people needed a lab on the island.
We haven't come up with a name for the lab yet. Palm Island Pictures, something like that. I don't know. There's definitely an offshoot podcast to be had from there.
So the book that I would have with me, actually you might be able to see it behind me. It's this circus book here, which someone just gave to me. They found in their office and they were like, Sarah, I think you'd appreciate this. And they gave it to me. It's just called The Circus by Noel Daniel. And it's not just photography, but I love it because it's all about the circus from the 1870s to the 1950s. And the photography in there is just, I think also being on a desert island, see, this is like polar opposite to me going Diane Arbus, but it reminds me of like the wonderfulness of humanity and all the colors and the costumes and like everything about it is just so joyful, and I think it would make me think about the best of humanity. And some of the vintage shots of the circus are just bonkers. So I love it for that. And it's got some really beautiful typography and some great illustration and some really old, like vintage circus posters, which are just, I think, absolute magic. So I love it. And it's really big, so it will take me ages to get through it. Nice.
It looks great, actually, to be fair.
Well, we will link to that and the show notes and to both books, as we always do. Thank you guys so much for coming on today. It's been a real kind of joy to have 2 people with so much expertise between the 2 of them come on and chat about stuff. And the projects you're doing sound really exciting and actually fill me with a lot of optimism and hope. So thank you.
Oh,
absolutely.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us on. It's been really lovely chatting to you guys. We've been hearing about this podcast and listening to it for such a long time now, and keep hearing how well it's going. So we feel very happy and privileged to be invited on. So we appreciate it.
Well, now you've been on, I'll stop berating you about it and texting you daily how well we're doing. No, but honestly, thank you so much for taking the time. It has been a pleasure.
All right. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to the latest episode. If you'd like to find out more or to see the show notes, please go over to exposenegative.com, or you can follow us on Instagram at xnegative. It's very imaginative. And if you want to email us, you can email us at info@exposenegative.com. I know, how did we come up with that? So hope you enjoy the podcast. Any suggestions, feedback, or general harassment, please send it in. And we'll catch you on the next one.